And more of them came today from Donald Trump, who had a ceremony for the signing of the Laken Riley Act, but he also did some stuff as well. From Ground News, Trump directing the opening of Guantanamo Bay Detention Center to hold migrants in the U.S. illegally. Now, there's rumblings from Tom Hooman and others that the deportations are not going fast enough, and that the quotas have been upped, and they want it to be thousands per day, not hundreds, thousands per day. And so I'm with it. I'm down with that. I want them all. If they're here illegally, I don't care if it's abuela or little children, you got to go. You can't be here illegally. It sets a bad precedent. And you have been emboldened by bad people on the left and bad organizations. That includes Catholic Charities that enabled the illegal smuggling of people, of human chattel into this union of states. And yeah, now you got to go back. That's the only way to set these things right. It has to be done this way. So now Trump wants to open Guantanamo Bay to hold criminal alien trespassers. And if you don't believe me, you can hear from himself.
An executive order to instruct the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security to begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay. Most people don't even know about it. We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back, so we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, right? And that's a tough place to get out of. Today's signings bring us one step closer to eradicating the scourge of migrant crime in our communities once and for all. And it was just it's just an unforced error that we even have to be doing this. Now we need Congress to provide full funding for the complete and total restoration of our sovereign borders, as well as financial support to remove record numbers of illegal aliens.
So Mark says it's got to be 10,000 a week. One of the numbers that I saw floated around was a number of 1,800 per day was the specific number used in migrants. Now, if they deported 1,800 people per day, that's 12,600 per week times 4. You're looking at 50,000 a month times 12. You're looking at 600,000 migrants a year times 4. You're looking at about 2 million migrants gone. That's not a great number considering there's way more than that in this union. But I also have to tell people when they get a little frustrated with the lack of deportations or the lack of deportations that seem to be not happening, there's also, for every 1,000 that are put on a plane and sent out, you got to think 2,500 are self-deporting. I would venture to guess, because they just don't want to deal with it. You know, you see the viral videos, that's anecdotal, I know, of Walmart's being empty and Home Depot's being empty and entire job sites and up in Fort Worth being empty and all these other places being empty because they're either in hiding or they're just leaving. So I was trying to tell people when they said, oh, well, you can't deport 10 million people or blah, 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 blah. You have to show that it's happening. You have to make a show of it. 30,000 in Guantanamo, put them on a plane, sending them back. Most people are going to be like, it's not even worth it anymore. And they're just going to leave. Most of them would just leave. And that's the way it should go. Yes, I think absolutely they should fire and jail any employer that does it. And of course, these employers are jumping on TikTok and these other places and they're going, we're the Americans that are going to do the jobs because look at my Vine, look at my company that picks grapes or whatever, and nobody's here. Well, your business plan obviously sucks because you can't pay people enough. And they're going to be like, well, I can't pay them. No. If it's unsustainable, you're not going to be able to stay in business. It's that simple. It's that simple. Pay your employees better or don't exist. Because guess what? Just like we talked about yesterday with the Colombian coffee, if you go out of business, somebody else will buy it and somebody else will make it work. You are not the be all end all. And I think some people have a problem with that. So that's the first one. Trump wants to get this detention center off the ground at Guantanamo Bay. So even if they're processing or whatever the case may be, they're out. They're out of the country for the worst criminal alien trespassers. And so that was the first thing that he talked about in this press conference, or in this ceremony, I guess we'll call it. And then he got to the second point before he signed the Laken Riley Act, which was the fact that federal employees need to come back to work. I don't know if you heard this, but federal employees under Biden for the last 4 years have been able to work from home. Meaning that, they kind of were making, even if you're making $85,000 a year working from home, you're making far too much money, because you're supposed to work 40 hours a week. And if you're working from home, you're probably working 20. Probably working 20 hours a week at max. And then you have your little remote thing that pretends that you're still working and all these other kinds of things. Now, don't get me wrong. I think work from home jobs are great. I think they're better for a work-life balance. But for the amount of money that government employees are getting paid for the amount of work that they do. Now, there are some people who work from home and they're actually very productive because, hey, they get stuff done. No worries with that. Government employees, when you work from home, 100% the laziest bunch of people you'll ever meet. Whatever, what that you'll ever. So the EPA guys are freaking out. Yeah, I bet you they are, because it used to be this in Rhode Island, and being from Rhode Island, I can tell you this. Your goal as a Rhode Islander when you were getting out of college, you desperately wanted to get a government job or a town job, something in government. You didn't want to start your own business because they were going to tax you to death. You wanted to get into some kind of government job, teacher, some kind of administrative job, the DMV, the post office, whatever the case may be, because then you got a pension. And then you were set for life. You were set for life if you were some kind of government employee up in Rhode Island. You were good to go. So that's the same attitude that these people. And so that's, yeah. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of tricks. There's all kinds of tricks that I've seen from people who work from home that do all kinds of stuff to make it look like they're being productive. And it's also reflected the fact that most jobs, not just government jobs, most office cubicle jobs, you could probably do 5 hours a day out of the 8 hours of work that you do per day. You could probably get it done in 5. Just so that they stretch it out to 8 to justify paying you whatever measly salary they gave you. Same thing I used to talk about with teaching. Teachers worked from 7 to 3 or 8 to 4, whatever the case may be, but they could get most of the quote unquote teaching done by noon. And then the rest of it's like study halls or PE or health or whatever stupid extracurriculars or stuff like that. Then of course you had your sports and everything. But yeah, these employees, they need to come back.
States who are in fact working hard from job sites and not from
hold on, I had a area from the top, Donnie.
Most of the time they're not working, they're not very productive, and it's unfair to the millions of people in the United States who are in fact working hard from job sites and not from their home. As federal employees, they must meet a high standard. They're representing our government, they're representing our country. If they don't agree by February 6th to show up back to work in their office, they will be terminated, and we will therefore be downscaling our government, which is something that the last 10 presidents have tried very hard to do but failed.
So I've been watching a couple of podcasts, and I know this idea has been floating around on some place, on Timcast in particular. Somebody floated this out like 2 weeks ago when they were talking. Apparently, when you move a company from one place to another, you lose about 20% of the workforce, because 20% is like, I'm just not moving. I'm just not going to move. So the idea is, why don't you take all these federal agencies and just sprinkle them across the country? Because you're going to lose 20% of the employees, because they won't leave DC or that metro area. They'll try to get jobs as like in lobbyist firms and lawyers and all these other kinds of places. But the idea is take the Department of Agriculture, put it in Nebraska. Take the FBI, put that in Alaska. Take the Department of Education, put that in Rhode Island because they love education up there, right? Take the Department of, I don't know, name your department and put it in Arizona or New Mexico or any of these other places. Just spread it out across the union so that way they're not all centralized in DC. You lose about 20% of that workforce because they wouldn't leave. And the fact is, a lot of these government jobs are redundant, right? Put the FBI in Alaska, right? That might as well. And put the CIA in the water. Just put it in the water. I don't even care. Put in Atlantis. But this idea that we need to have redundant government jobs, because every single agency, whether it's DEA, ATF, which should both be shut down, or the National Park Service, the ground administrative floor, they all have repeat jobs. They all have 400 of the same people. Especially now with AI, especially now with advanced programs, you don't need the human capital that they had before. And yet they still employ them. They still keep them around. And that's a waste of money. And I like to see Trump, and of course, the big line is until you get rid of Medicare or Medicaid, all this other spending isn't going to do anything because, that spending, the Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, that's going to bankrupt everything. That's going to bankrupt the system before anything else, no matter how much money you save. But the fact of the matter is, it's better that we find out the waste that our government is partaking in. And Trump talked about more today.
$50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas.
That's pretty much like the headline of Doge. We saved you $50 million in spending on condoms, and then pretty much everything else.
$50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs. How about that? We stopped an attempt to make an illicit payment for illegal alien resettlement. We canceled $181 million in DEI training contracts. This is just for the training of people in DEI, which has been terminated and completely terminated. And we paused $1.7 billion in unauthorized payments to foreign organizations, including stopping more than $40 million that was on its way out the door to the very corrupt World Health Organization, which has not done its job and not done it properly. We also blocked $45 million for diversity scholarships in Burma. 45, that's a lot of money for diversity scholarships in Burma.
In Burma.
You can imagine where that money went. These were the types of payments, and many others. I could stand here all day and tell you things that we found, and we have to find them quickly because we want the money to flow to proper places.
And it's just, and some people will argue, hey, that keeps the dollar strong because if we give Burma $40 million for whatever diversity, then they'll spend it and then they're dependent on it and it keeps the dollar strong. I don't care. I don't care. Don't do it. Don't spend money that I don't have kids, but my friends' kids and my family, my siblings' kids are going to have to pay for and shoulder the burden of forever or for as long as they're alive as well. But the big thing was the signing of the Laken Riley Act, which mandates the detention of migrants accused of theft and violent crimes, even before conviction, as stated by Trump. Trump described the Laken Riley Act as a landmark law and a tremendous tribute to Laken Riley, who was killed in February 2024, and really put a face, unfortunately, to the criminal alien problem in this union. Because every time you would try to say, what about criminal alien trespassers? They'd be like, but it's an abuela or it's a little child. You can't get rid of them. And then it's like this dude who had multiple convictions and I believe was deported before or was at least ordered to, brutally assaulted and killed this innocent young girl. This innocent young girl who had done nothing wrong, and she is now dead because of liberal policies that enabled the caring of other people, of foreigners, to people born in the state of Georgia. And it's just absolutely ridiculous that that happened. So Trump signed that today with the family of Laken Riley present. And it's a tragic scene. I you know, as good as it is, that family will never be the same. That family will never be the same. That sister will never have, her sister is gone and she'll have to live with the ghost of her sister psychologically. She's going to have to carry that the rest of her life. Her parents are always going to have, you know, the dead child held up in this status. And I get it, because, you know, your child being dead, you can't even imagine it. And then you have that loss that the parents have to deal with. So it's a small comfort for the family.
Mr. President, government funding. Can you take a quick question on government funding?
And of course, you have bloodthirsty, stupid reporters. I know you just signed this thing about Laken Riley, but can you talk about government funding? And by the way, what an epic shot right there, Trump. Can you talk about government funding real quick?
I don't think this is appropriate time, really. I respect that, but I don't think it's appropriate. I can just tell you government is doing very well, and we're cutting way back, but this is not the appropriate time. Thank you.
That's Laken Riley's mom right next to Trump. And it's good that something came out of it, but it's never good that you know, human beings being reactionary, that we had to have something so tragic get to there.